Week 11 has officially wrapped up and the playoffs are closer than you may think. That is why on today's episode of the Fantasy Football Fellas podcast, we are going to be breaking down potential playoff heroes. We are going to be looking ahead to weeks 14 to the rest of the season, weeks 15 to 17, whenever your fantasy playoffs are this year, and highlighting some of the best matchups across every position. Welcome into this episode of the Fantasy Football Fellas podcast. Lucas Wenzel and Tyler Plath hanging out with you on this Tuesday. It is Thanksgiving week, Ty. What is one thing you were thankful for this Thanksgiving? Feels fitting. It feels fitting.
It's fitting, but I'm thankful for not having a winless or one-win dynasty team in our dynasty league, and that I'm actually going to be the number 3 seed this year because your boy is just GM of the year. But that's what I'm most thankful for this year.
That is a good thing to be thankful for. To be fair, it's not your team wasn't 0, 1, or 2 wins because you suck at fantasy football. You went through a hefty rebuild process, and you are now out on the other side. So Ty is thankful for seeing the process through. As the Philadelphia 76ers would say, trust the process.
Oh, we trust the process with this one, that's for sure.
Ty trusted the process, and he has come through. That's a wonderful thing to be thankful for this holiday season. Look, I'm thankful that we have an abundance of players to talk about in today's episode. I know it's a very corny transition, but
I loved it.
But I mean, some of these players, I'm looking at them and I'm like, man, you know what? These guys have some hefty playoff schedules. We have a lot of guys to talk about. There's a lot of exciting guys on this list too. There's going to be no shortage of conversation on this episode. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast already, make sure you do that. And make sure to turn on those notifications as well so you know when all of our new podcast episodes go up. And if you're listening to the audio version, hey, we're super grateful for you over there. If you wouldn't mind leaving us a nice little review, give us some thoughts on what you think of the podcast. We always love hearing from you all. If you haven't subscribed on YouTube already, hi to all those of you watching on YouTube. I got the double wave this time. I don't know. Got like the jazz hands this time.
Jeez, a little hyped for this one, aren't we?
Got a little hyped. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube as well and turn on the notification bell. That way you'll be alerted of all of our new videos, not just podcast videos, YouTube videos Monday, Wednesday, Friday, shorts every single day. We have a ton of content coming for you all. I will say, I'll make this disclaimer at the top of the episode. Only one podcast episode this week. Obviously, Thanksgiving is on Thursday. The fellows will be traveling for the holiday. So as much as we wish we could be with you all on that Thanksgiving for your Thanksgiving Day travels, we will be traveling ourselves. So we will not have an episode for you all. However, we will be back with shorts every single day this week. So make sure you're following us on all the socials. FFL is on Twitter. The FFL is on Instagram. Fantasy Football Fellas, TikTok, and YouTube as well. Did I say Facebook in there? Facebook, Fantasy Football Fellas, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook?
Yeah.
There we go. I got them all now. Make sure you're following us on there for content throughout the week as well. My gosh, this has been a long intro. There's a lot to cover in that intro, though. The people are here for playoff heroes, Ty, so let's give them what they want. Let's dive on into discussing the best schedules during the final playoff stretch. Now, I kind of wanted to do the traditional quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end as we break down, but let's be honest, it's a lot more fun to talk about running backs and wide receivers than it is quarterbacks and tight ends. And so we'll pocket the quarterbacks and tight ends for the tail end because there are a few guys that I think are worth bringing up. And then there are just a handful of guys I'm like, I don't know, they have good schedules. If you desperately need them, I guess you can play them. We'll pocket them for last. There might be a little more nuanced discussion around them, but let's start with the running back position first. And in my opinion, the guy who has the best playoff schedule is Austin Eckler of the Los Angeles Chargers. I mean, you look at it, it's Denver, it's Vegas, it's Buffalo, and Denver again. And we're going to start off with an easy one because we don't need to talk about Eckler for more than probably 30 seconds. The dude is going to be dominant. If Mike Williams is out the rest of the season, he's going to be involved in the passing game. I know this last week was a little bit disappointing, but we don't need to spend much time here. He's going to be good, right? No other way to think about it.
No, I mean Denver, Vegas, and Buffalo, they're all in the top half of defenses in receptions allowed to running backs. That's Austin Eckler's calling card. So yeah, he's gonna be fine. He's gonna do great.
And they all stink against the run. I mean, I know Denver has been a little bit better, but you even watch the Vikings on Sunday Night Football. Like Ty Chandler and Alexander Madison, they found quite a few holes against that Denver run defense. So Austin Eckler should have an easy time on the ground. Vegas, their run defense has been getting better, but still not a defense I'm scared of. And we all know Buffalo's defense recently has just been very, very bad against the run. You have a number for that? You looked like you were about ready to spell out a number.
Oh, no. Yeah, fantasy points allowed, receptions. My thing with Eckler is how much rushing is he actually going to have? But it's Austin Eckler. It's Austin Eckler. He's going to be fine. He's going to win you your leagues if you get him at this point.
Yeah, right. If he's on your team, he's gonna take you to the promised land. I have no doubts about that. The schedule coming up is just so juicy even before the playoffs. Let's move on to a different running back though, whose calling card is also his pass catching. I want to talk about Ramondre Stevenson for the New England Patriots. Look, they drop Pittsburgh, Kansas City, Denver, and Buffalo over the final 4 weeks between weeks 14 and 17. You look at Ramondre since week 6. They finally got him involved in the passing attack. 5+ targets in 4 of his last 5 games. He's finished finally as the running back 20 or better in all but 1 game during that stretch. Your big concern, much like Austin Eckler, I mean, we're talking about Austin Eckler light here, basically. Is your big concern is the rushing volume, right? 10 attempts, 9, 10, 9. Finally got 20 in week 10 before his week 11 bye. I mean, that's not encouraging a guy who's only getting 10 rushing attempts per game. So clearly, right, the contingency here is receiving work. If he's going to see 5+ targets in these games, he's going to continue to be this borderline top 12 option every single week. So like the question we just need to ask is like, does he maintain this 5 to 6 target pace the rest of the season?
I have reason to believe that he would. I mean, this Patriots team, they're going through some changes right now. It's being rumored, it's being reported that there could potentially be a change at quarterback. It could be Bailey Zappi for, the rest of the season just to see what they've got, because it seems like they've pretty much moved on from Mac Jones.
Yep.
But even with the quarterback change, like it would be pure negligence for the Patriots to take the amount of routes that Ramondre is running, take that away from him. He's their best weapon. He should be getting the ball at least 15 times a game, at least. So you would hope the rushing attempts are better, but if he's getting 5 to 6 targets, I think it kind of makes up for it.
It 100% does. I mean, again, that's what was missing over the course of the first 5 weeks, was that Ramondre was just not getting involved in the passing attack. And then once you saw those targets kick up, it's like, oh my gosh, wait, here's the Ramondre of old that we all know and love. Again, you look at that playoff schedule. Pittsburgh, you're not scared of. Kansas City is really the only tough matchup in there, and they've been a tough matchup across the board this year. But you hope, the Patriots are playing from behind, so Ramondre's going to get plenty of receiving work in that game, you would hope. And again, Denver, Buffalo, 2 defenses you are not scared of for running backs. I'm pulling up. Ramondre, 194 routes run this year. That is the 5th most at the running back position. 3rd in running back targets, 4th in running back receptions. I mean, it's 100% contingent on if he's involved in the passing attack. And they've clearly been willing to make that change over the last 5 weeks. So I think he keeps his pace up. I love the schedule down the stretch. You could be looking at a guy who, when it comes down to the championship weeks against Denver and Buffalo, a guy, who's given you 18, 19, 20 points in winning you a week. So yeah, I like Ramondre rest of season. If you have the opportunity to go out and trade for him post bye, if the hype has kind of cooled down on him a little bit in your league, I would go do that. If you're also holding on to Ramondre, I would also suggest you hold on to Ramondre at the end of the season as well. Let's move on to another. We got a lot of pass catching running backs in here, but frankly, this running back hasn't been used like one this year. Not as much as he used to be, I should say. DeAndre Swift of the Philadelphia Eagles. Final 4 games, weeks 14 to 17. Dallas, Seattle, New York Giants, and the Arizona Cardinals. Got off to a hot start this year. He cooled off in week 7 to 9, though. 10.5, 1.4, 9.4. Not 1.4. That's incorrect. That should be a 15.4 if I remember correctly. 1.4 is not right because he would not have been a top 25 running back in that game. And he had been a top 25 running back still in those 3 games before the bye. He was earlier, though, before that skid. He was on a 5-game stretch of finishing as a running back 15 or better. He's still getting the primary bulk of the touches here. 2 games of less than 15 attempts since week 2 when he took over. So he's getting all the rushing work. You look at Seattle and New York and Arizona. I mean, these are games where the Eagles are probably going to pounce early. They're going to get up early, and they're going to be playing from ahead, which would lead to a Swift-heavy game script. DeAndre Swift is a top is the running back what rest of season? I'll let you fill in the blank. DeAndre Swift top blank running back rest of season. Because I look at that playoff schedule and I think there's legit like top 7 upside there.
Yeah, I mean, like, you got to stick it out for the next couple weeks because you go Kansas City, Buffalo, San Francisco, and Dallas. You got to stick it out for that. But once you get through that, again, Seattle, New York Giants, and Arizona, he's a top 10 running back the rest of the way then. So we're not going to speculate buy low or sell high or anything like that. But if you have DeAndre Swift, you got to just stick it out. Okay, it's going to get kind of dicey here. Stick it out because once you hit playoffs, he's going to come through for you.
I mean, this trade isn't feasible anymore, but when I put out the Ken Walker video last week, the short last week about how people should go out and sell Ken Walker. Obviously, this was before his injury. I had no clue he was going to get injured, but one of my favorite trades that I saw pop up a few times in the comments was I went out and traded for DeAndre Swift. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's a brilliant deal because they're hovering right around that same range, right? You got not the same issues with both, but DeAndre Swift isn't catching as many passes as he was in Detroit. Ken Walker isn't catching any passes. You have 2 guys who are just getting a bulk of the carries who are hyper efficient. I'll take the guy who has the better schedule because Ken Walker's schedule is walking death for a running back. I mean, San Francisco twice, Philadelphia, Dallas. Obviously played the Rams this last week and got injured in that game. So we don't know what Ken Walker's status is going forward. But I saw a lot of people saying like Ken Walker for Swift. I'm like, yes, go do that immediately because this schedule for Swift, again, I think he has top 7 upside written all over him if he can capitalize on these matchups. Let's move on. Next running back. There's really only one question we can ask about this next running back. You look at the Atlanta Falcons schedule rest of season. Not even rest of season, looking at weeks 14 to 17 specifically. Tampa Bay, Carolina, Indianapolis, and Chicago. And the only question we need to ask here, Ty, because you look at the matchups, all right? You look at the matchups. Carolina, the 3rd worst team against fantasy running backs this year. The Indianapolis Colts, the 4th worst team against fantasy running backs this year. The Chicago Bears, the 7th worst team against fantasy running backs this year. You are handing Bijan Robinson in the championship weeks, 15 to 17, you are handing him 3 top 7 running back matchups. He should absolutely feast. But the only question we can ask Ty is, can you trust Arthur Smith? Can you trust him to make him the focal point back? The man is coaching for his job. He has to, right? We saw it, 22 carries in week 10 before the bye? You have to assume he gets him the ball, right? That's the problem I have right now is I don't know if I could trust Arthur Smith to capitalize on probably, debatably, the juiciest rest of season running back schedule on the playoffs at least.
Yeah, I feel like this stretch of games is very similar to week 1 versus Carolina. And I know I'm comparing one game to 4, but the week 1, Arthur Smith can do whatever he wanted to do in that game, and he wants to just run the ball. So in my head, I'm kind of picturing what we saw from week like 3 to 4, maybe 3 to 6, where the carries are probably going to be split between him and Algier just because Arthur Smith will be able to run the ball.
Because Arthur Smith is a boneheaded idiot. That's why.
Facts. Straight facts, homie. But what's going to separate Bijan from Algier is that Bijan is going to get the receiving work.
Sure.
And Desmond Ridder is coming back in now, so there is some hope, I will call it.
If you
That
want to call it hope.
yeah, I don't. Yeah, we're talking hope between Taylor Heineke or Desmond Ritter here, but no, I like this stretch of games is exactly what Arthur Smith was hoping for, where he could just run the ball till till he can't no more, and he's going to sprinkle in some receptions for Bijan. So I think he's going to be just fine. But I'm not going to phrase it like I'm trusting Arthur Smith, because that's what a crazy person does.
That is what a crazy person. I'm glad you have learned finally after all of your Drake London loyalty. I know you're still loyal to Drake London, but
he's still number 4 on the jersey list.
So. That's fair. He's gone down though. He used to be.
He's gone down.
3.
Yeah.
He used to be top 3. Not anymore though. Look, but yeah, I mean, I like what you brought up about Bijan. I mean, over the first 4 weeks, 22 targets over the first 4 weeks. He saw 5+ targets in each of those games. 6-5, 6-5. Then ever since he's only seen 21 targets total. So I would agree. I think that does turn around. I even wouldn't be surprised if Bijan starts to become more of the bell cow.
Please.
But this is the thing. Arthur Smith is now coaching for his job. He cannot keep losing games where Bijan Robinson does not touch the football. I'm not saying Bijan's going to give you 22 every game, but let's say Bijan gives you 17 carries. Let's say he gives you another 5 targets. Like, you're looking at 22 opportunities there, which is where I think Bijan should be hovering in this offense. And what he can do with that against the Indianapolis Colts, what he can do with that against the Carolina Panthers, Chicago Bears, oh my gosh. Bijan Robinson could be the hero we've long been waiting for. I just so hope Arthur Smith doesn't just fumble the bag and saves himself his job by just feeding Bijan the football, because there's no reason to take him at 8 if you aren't going to feed him in games where he can absolutely feast.
I mean, what's the difference between how the Patriots handled Ramondre and how Arthur Smith is handling Bijan Robinson in terms of touches?
The Patriots figured it out quicker. That's the difference.
Which is why Arthur Smith needs to be gone. We needs to get out of town. But it sounds crazy to say that you're trusting Arthur Smith. Don't phrase it like that.
Right.
Phrase it as, I like the matchups that he has. That's your answer.
That's your answer. And I don't think you're going to be able to go out and buy Bijan after a 22-touch game. So this is more of a, hey, if you're a Bijan manager, you got a great stretch in the championship coming up here. And you better hope you get to the championship, because Bijan could take you to fantasy glory at the end of the year. Got a few more running backs I want to talk about here, Ty. How about, let's move on to Kansas City. Let's talk about Isaiah Pacheco, who gets Buffalo, New England, Vegas, and Cincinnati in weeks 14 to 17. Before the bye last week, 2 duds. Barely put up over 6.5 fantasy points in each. Now, we're recording this before the Philadelphia-Kansas City game tonight on Monday Night Football, and I wouldn't be surprised if Pacheco puts up another dud here. Now that I put that out into the universe, Pacheco for 20+ tonight, book it.
Book it.
I'm just not going to be surprised if it's another 6.5 point dud against the best run defense in the NFL right now, the best defensive front the league probably has. That being said, earlier this year between weeks 3 and 7, he finished as the running back 15 or better each week. He had 15+ rushing attempts in all but one game there, and he scored 3 rushing touchdowns during that stretch. He did not score before that stretch. He has not scored on the ground after that stretch. He caught a receiving touchdown, but that's not Isaiah Pacheco's forte. So really, I'm like, hasn't scored much since. It's not a mouth-watering stretch like Bijan, but really, you look at it after Philadelphia, his only unfavorable matchup is really against New England. And like, it's not a poor matchup. It's just not a good matchup. I'm getting Cam Akers vibes from last year. I'm getting Cam Akers vibes. Now, I know Cam Akers came out of the woodwork. I know he was dropped in leagues and it was like, all right, shocker, Cam Akers is back. But like, I'm talking about a guy who in these games, could get 16, 17, 18, 19 rush attempts, piles up, a couple 90-yard games and a score in each of those games. And you're looking at him, and it's like, Isaiah Pacheco is just scoring me 18+ in each of the last 4 weeks. Like, I could see, there's a world where I see that happening. What say you about that comparison? I know it's not exactly the same because Cam Akers came off the waiver wire, but in terms of like usage, Like that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing just high volume and teams that will give up a bunch of yards per carry on the ground, which is what Isaiah Pacheco feasts on.
Yeah, I think the best way to say it is that this is a bet on the Kansas City offense, right? And
Yes.
you may hear that and go like, well, then it's Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelsey. Well, yes, for sure, they will get theirs, but he has no threat. Like he is the guy in that backfield, and
Yep.
they're going to. I, I don't know if we can necessarily say like they're going to preserve Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelsey for the playoffs. That's kind of what I want to say. Like, like again, like you said, these teams are giving up some of the, or have allowed running backs to be hyper efficient against them. That's what Pacheco has feasted on so far this year. I don't see why this can't continue for the guy.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Cam Akers last year over the last 4 weeks 5.4 yards per carry, 5.13, 6.4, 5. Well, 4.95. I'm counting it as 5. I mean, he feasted on efficiency 12, 23, 19, 21 touches in those games, 3 straight games of 100 plus in week 16 to 18. I mean, that's what I think we're looking at here for Isaiah Pacheco. Again, not much of a target volume for Akers. 3, 2, 2, 3. He did score 3 touchdowns against Denver. That was the one where he finished as a running back 1 overall. But like you look at that, and if he even spreads those out, like, we're looking at games where Cam Akers, he could have put up 3 straight games of 20 plus fantasy points. Like that's what I'm wondering if we could get from Isaiah Pacheco in the playoffs this year. So I think if he puts up a dud against Philadelphia tonight, we'll see about this tomorrow. If he puts up a dud, I'm willing to go out and buy low on him. I think I'm going to go throw out a buy low offer on him and try and snag him for what I think could be a dominating stretch in the playoffs.
Oh, you just made me so happy. Because while I fault and seed on my Drake London love, you fault and seed on your Isaiah Pacheco hate because
that's fair. That is fair.
Someone was in Pacheco's
I still stand
corner.
by that. I still stand by that coming into this year. I was not an Isaiah Pacheco fan, but as the season pans out, opinions got to change. And I mean, just like you with Christian Watson, I'm sure. Let's move on.
Excuse me. I am not the third amigo in this podcast, but then Christian Watson is, he's getting there.
I was gonna say I've been there. I've been there with Christian Watson. Let's touch on Derrick Henry quick. Look, I know he's been struggling, but the consolation is that he gets the Houston Texans twice in the playoffs between weeks 14 and 17. Miami, Houston, Seattle, Houston. Is that enough for you to go and throw out a low ball offer on him? See if you can snag him on the cheap? And like on the cheap being like you still have to give up a valuable piece. Like, don't get me wrong. Like buying him on the cheap is not throwing out potential league winner Jerick McKinnon for the second year in a row to get Derrick Henry. But like is it worth it to you to try and go out and like, let's say Ken Walker. Let's say Ken Walker comes back and is perfectly fine for week 12 next week. Would you go out and trade Ken Walker for Derrick Henry? Would you throw that kind of an offer out?
Maybe the best way to answer that is this. I wouldn't trade for Derrick Henry to be one of my top 2 guys. I would trade for him if he's like a third option for me, because my worry is just based on what we've seen so far this year from Tennessee is that when they get down, they don't necessarily ditch the run, but they get very, very close to just kind of forgetting that they have Derrick Henry in a backfield.
Yeah, right.
So my worry is, you've got Miami, Seattle, and Houston, who's been better on offense this year. Do they get ahead quick and, kind of put Derrick Henry out of work, essentially? So that's why I say, like, get him as a third option. Don't get him as one of your top 2 options, because I just don't feel great having to rely on a situation like that for Derrick Henry. But as a third option, I think it's great if he, this could be the time to try to acquire him on a low, because maybe it gets better. You take the shot. But yeah, like I said, I don't feel comfortable putting him in a spot where you got to rely on him every single week.
That's the problem. I don't know if you're going to be able to acquire him for a 3 price, because you're going to have to give up one of your top 2 guys to get him is the problem, right? So unless if you just went 0 wide receiver this year and you have like 5 running backs that are just absolutely loaded, like, sure, I guess, but like my worry is that like I have like for instance, I've had like Kyron Williams or James Conner as my 2 in quite a few leagues this year. And so like I would be intrigued to try and do that, but I'd have to give up James Conner plus to get Derrick Henry because it's not like James Conner has been great after coming off of IR. And Kyron Williams still isn't off of IR. He isn't even playing football yet. So like those are guys where I'm like, if I could go upgrade off of those guys, I would, but you have to recognize you're not getting a 1-for-1 swap there. You're going to have to throw in the wide receiver as well. But I don't know. Derrick Henry is one we have to throw in here because he typically feasts against the Houston Texans. Now the Houston Texans have been better against the run this year. Still a good matchup to target, but it also isn't, the worst run defense as of old. They've actually beefed up a little bit this year with D'Amico Ryans, but he was a name that I thought was at least throwing out there. Last duo, I already spoiled it. What I want to talk about. Look, I hate that the Pittsburgh Steelers have a good schedule for running backs. New England, Indianapolis, Cincinnati, Seattle. Seattle. Dude, I can. I was thinking the Cincinnati. I was thinking the Cincinnati Bengals. Here I say Seattle.
Seattle. I love it.
First it was the Dallas Cowboys. Now it's the Seattle Seahawks. Someone fire me.
Helmet.
Someone fire me. Look, New England, Indianapolis, Cincinnati, Seattle. I want to I can't stop laughing. I also just kind of want to vomit that we have to talk about the Steelers offense. But I'm not going to deny the favorable schedule though, so I'll leave it at this. Who do you want rest of season, Najee or Jalen?
Jalen Warren. At
I
least you get work, or I should say, receiving work has been kind of balanced between them since coming back from their bye week. Najee's been getting the nod a little more in rushing attempts, but Jalen Warren is by and far the more efficient running back. He's been proving it the past couple of weeks, going over 100 yards in back-to-back weeks. Give me the more efficient guy.
100% agree. I would rather have Jalen Warren rest of season. Again, with that juicy schedule at the end, you might be able to throw him in as a high-quality flex play over the final weeks here. Tyler, take a quick break. We'll be back with wide receivers, quarterbacks, and tight end heroes. Today's podcast episode is brought to you by our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. Now, we love Underdog. It is the easiest place to play best ball formats, and they even have their own form of player props called Pick'em. You can make up to 20 times your money on a single night by correlating props together. 2 picks will triple your money, 3 will 6 times it, 4 will 10 times it, and 5 plays that all hit will multiply your entry by 20. You can even place insurance on your picks too, so if only 4 of your 5 props hit, you still get 10 times your entry. And if you use our code FELLAS when signing up, Underdog is going to double your first deposit up to $100. Alrighty, we are back. We're going to wrap out this episode talking about some wide receiver, quarterback, and tight end playoff heroes. Ty, let's move into the wide receivers. Again, I'm going to start us off with the softball because we all know CeeDee Lamb is going to dominate the rest of the season. We all know he's going to be a top 7 guy. But Philadelphia, Buffalo, Miami, Detroit, he is going to absolutely crush because not only has he been getting the volume, 57 targets over the last 4 weeks. How good are you at math? Can we do the math for the people at home? The math equals a lot. It's more than 12.
It's almost 14. It's like 13 point something.
It is. Because now I'm going to do the math. So
I
don't sound like
no,
idiot.
Sorry. It is 14 because it's 56. 14.
Yep. Yeah. It is 14.25 targets per game he is averaging over the last 4 weeks. And the best part is that all these games have opportunity to be incredibly high scoring. Not only are they favorable wide receiver matchups, but Philadelphia, that's going to be a high scoring game. Buffalo, they're probably going to be fighting for the playoffs. They're going to have to put up points. Miami, we all know that offense. Detroit, they'll probably have clinched the NFC North by this point, but still a game where they're probably going to look to put up points. Make a statement
There's,
against the Dallas Cowboys.
I mean, think about it like this. If Dallas beats Philly, then Philly and Detroit are then tied for the first seed. So at that point, Dallas and Detroit could be a battle for first seed or division power for Dallas.
There's so much opportunity for fireworks in these games, and CeeDee Lamb is just going to crush. There's no other way to put it. So the only other guy I'll bring up from the Dallas Cowboys, because they by far have the best playoff schedule, one of the best playoff schedules. Actually, probably the second best, but I digress. Brandon Cooks, he just like, I'm looking at these sneaky guys that no one talks about, because I feel like, because when you think about it, it was Cam Akers last year, it was Jerick McKinnon, it was Amon-Ra St. Brown, it was Rashad Penny, guys we don't really talk about. Now I understand Brandon Cooks doesn't entirely fit that criteria, but I mean, look, he scored 32 in week 10. Like, are you chasing the opportunity? You're throwing a low ball offer in here? Does he have like super duper sneaky like Corey Davis upside from 2019?
Oh,
How about that pull?
What a pull that
How about
is.
that pull?
Whoa.
But like Corey Davis was on fire at the end of 2019 because he just had a crap ton of favorable matchups, and he just took advantage of them.
It pains me to say this. Because I guess I should say it like this. Going into week 11 against Carolina, there was a lot of talk about, hey, this is a Tony Pollard get right game.
Right.
And sure, he found the end zone kind of on a 21-yard broken tackle run that probably shouldn't have scored on. But if his get right game is 12 carries,
it's the worst part.
Mike, what are we doing? That's the thing. What are we doing? So if that is the get right game for Tony Pollard, they clearly just want to throw the ball. They clearly just want to rely on Dak. They want to rely on CeeDee Lamb. They want to rely on Jake Ferguson. There is all of a sudden some intrigue for Brandon Cooks to be one of these late season studs that just comes out of nowhere, because Dallas will just want to throw the ball the entire time. And the matchups actually kind of help that out too, I guess. I mean, Philly's a tough matchup. Buffalo is up and down at this point. Detroit, is it at Detroit? Do we know? Is it at Detroit?
I should have put that in there.
No, it's at Dallas. But
okay, at Dallas.
I feel like the point is that if the get right game is 12 carries for Tony Pollard, just pisses me off to no end. But clearly, like, Brandon Cooks is going to get some more looks, because I'm sorry, CeeDee Lamb, if he's only getting 14 I shouldn't say only 14 targets. Who are we kidding? That's astounding numbers, but
only 14.
Yeah.
Only 14.
If he's averaging,
why isn't he getting 25? My gosh.
Yeah, why can't he have a Keenan Allen game like in week 3? But no, if CeeDee Lamb is going to get 14 targets a game, they want to throw the ball at least 30, 40 times. That means that there's other targets to go around. Hopefully you just have to hope that Brandon Cooks can separate himself from, like, Michael Gallup, Jalen Tolbert, because for whatever reason, they've been getting some targets as well recently. I don't know why. Makes me just want to bang my head in a wall, because I'm just like, what is going on in Dallas? It makes zero sense. But what does make sense is that CeeDee Lamb and Brandon Cooks have really, really good playoff schedules.
Since literally on the season, the Dallas Cowboys are third in pass rate over expectation.
Come on, Mike.
And here you go. Here's the killer. Since week 7, this doesn't include week 11 metrics, by the way. Those will be out shortly after week 11 has actually come to a close. But the Cowboys since week 7 are second in pass rate over expectation. So yeah, they are starting to chuck the ball around a lot more. Clearly, Tony Pollard is not. Mike says we want to run the ball more. What he actually meant by that was we want to throw the ball more. I guess I don't know how you mix up the two, Mike, but yeah, the Dallas Cowboys have been passing at a much higher rate over expectation, and yeah, it has come at the demise of Tony Pollard. But again, CeeDee Lamb is going to feast, and like if you want to flyer out of left field, it might be Brandon Cooks.
I'm going to write a strongly worded email to Dallas and just say, get your crap straight, because I feel like the NFL should also be fining coaches that lie to fantasy managers.
Yeah,
Doug
Doug Peterson's another
Peterson,
good example.
Mike McCarthy, Arthur
Arthur
Smith,
Smith.
all of you, fined game checks.
And find a new job.
Exactly.
No.
Exactly. Get the bin because you're garbage.
Let's move on to Seattle. We spent a lot of time on Dallas.
I needed to.
That's a lot more.
That's been pent up for a while.
Clearly, because every time we talk about the Cowboys, you get very passionate about Tony Pollard, which
And
I appreciate. But
I hate it because it's the Cowboys, and I'm like, I hate the Cowboys. Why am I getting so passionate about the Cowboys? But here we are.
Seattle Seahawks. They have probably, if it's not the Cowboys, it's the Seahawks, the Seattle Seahawks, who have the best remaining schedule.
Callback jokes.
Rest of season. Yes, callback jokes. We love it. We love it around here. Just embrace it. Look, San Francisco, Philadelphia, Tennessee, Pittsburgh over the week 14 to 17 stretch. Look, DK Metcalf, he's turning it around finally. 15, wide receiver 15 or better the last 2 weeks. This is somewhat similar to CeeDee Lamb, too. I mean, you look at San Francisco, you look at Philly, those 2 games especially, there is potential for high-scoring games. Even look at from week 12 on. There's a lot of good matchups here where the Seahawks could be in high-scoring affairs. Now, your buy low opportunity on DK Metcalf has officially passed. You missed out on that. You probably could have done it again last week, but you definitely missed out on it because 2 weeks ago would have been the prime time to buy low on him. But are you, after a 20-point week, are you looking to invest with the schedule? Is he worth buying high? Is there too much risk? Because for me, I look at, I'm like, I know the volume's there, but on any given, we saw DK Metcalf have 14 targets, but only caught 5 in that. For me, it's too much risk, and he's let the manager who has him hold on to him. If it works out for them, great. But the price I'd have to pay for DK Metcalf right now, probably just emotionally and psychologically, just isn't worth it for me.
This Seattle offense is having issues, and it's not necessarily that I'm going to point the finger at DK Metcalf because of his good performances, but I guess the most recent development, Geno Smith did pick up an injury week 11 against the Rams. He did come back.
Yep.
But no one knows what that's going to be like. And they play a short week. So at worst, you're looking at DK Metcalf with Drew Lock, which not really liking that a whole lot. My thing, I don't know if it's risky or if it's safe. I just can't get a read on this offense. I really can't. The only thing that's made sense to me is the backfield. But in terms of pass catchers, I just don't know when. There's no way you can tell what it's going to be a Tyler Lockett, Jackson Smith-Njigba, or DK Metcalf game. You just can't tell.
Right. So, let's talk about those other 2 then, because Tyler Lockett, he's quietly been the wide receiver 24 this year. He's had 7+ targets in 5 of his last 6. Is he a sneaky buy low candidate for you? Again, you look at the schedule and it lines up and it says these could be Tyler Lockett games. They easily could be. So are you is he a sneaky buy low candidate where again, he's not coming off a great performance. What is Tyler Lockett? that's the give me the Jeopardy
Tyler
answer
Lockett?
To what is Tyler Lockett?
A Kansas State grad of 8 years ago. I'm sorry. Kept with the joke. Couldn't. Yeah. Oh well. I feel like thank you. If there's one Seahawks wide receiver I'm willing to bet on, can I say it's Jackson Smith-Njigba? I know you just asked for Tyler Lockett, but
we could talk about him next because he was also in there. Part of my question was going to be, would you rather have JSN? But
I guess to answer your question though about Tyler Lockett being a sneaky buy low, I just really have no interest in buying him at all. Because it's kind of the same reason as DK. I just can't figure out what it is that makes these wide receivers tick for one game or for another. And I'll segue into this question that you had asked. Would you rather have Tyler Lockett or JSN or really even DK Metcalf?
We could throw DK in that conversation too. Yeah. Out of those 3, who would you most want to have? Mine is DK just because he puts up the points, but for what it's going to cost me to get JSN, I will happily take a flyer on that.
Well, and that's my answer is JSN because you don't really have to give up a whole lot as you would for a DK Metcalf, who's probably going to have his name value back now. You don't have to give up as much for a Tyler Lockett. But Jackson Smith-Njigba, we know the talent that he has. What if this is the end of the year breakout that we see for a rookie wide receiver? It's a low risk, high reward bet that, again, if you buy in on JSN, it probably doesn't come at a huge detriment to your team. So that I would lean JSN.
Yeah, I would as well. I mean, we saw 3 straight games of double-digit fantasy points, 2 straight at 12 plus, which again is nothing like exciting. But like I turn on when I watch on Red Zone, when I watch on NFL Sunday Ticket, I got Red Zone in one corner. I've got my other 3 games on, and like whenever I have the Seahawks on and I see JSN get involved, he had a beautiful pass down the sideline yesterday, or a beautiful catch down the sideline. It was just natural, just over the shoulder, hauls it in, gets both feet in, and just tiptoes out of bounds. I'm like, this dude is a natural. Like he is so good. He makes everything look so smooth. Like the Seahawks should give him the football more, and they just don't. Like 5+ targets in 5 of the last 6, but you can't do a whole lot on 5 targets. You just can't.
Well, and I think this is where Pete Carroll, Shane Waldron, who's the offensive coordinator, are probably getting a little prideful with things. Like we know that Seattle wants to run the ball. Zach Charbonnet, he had 15 carries and he had 6 receptions, 15 carries, 6 receptions. That's 21 touches. I'm sorry. DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Zach Charbonnet, or even Kenneth Walker. I know that there's a ton of mouths to feed, but like there's too much touches going to this backfield at the moment. Like that's the way I'll say it.
Right. You want to know who doesn't have an issue with that? The San Francisco 49ers, because they get older. I mean, there's usually one straggler in it, but it seems to rotate.
Yep.
Right. It seems to rotate. It's never CMC. Just like I think it'll never be DK Metcalf, or maybe in Ken Walker if he's healthy. But like you get Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, and now here you have DK, Tyler Lockett, JSN, Ken Walker. Like some of these touches can filter back to the wide receivers, and I'll even say it. Some of Tyler Lockett's touches can filter to JSN.
Mm-hmm.
Can I throw this out there? Does he have like? If I'm going to choose one player to break out of the absolute woodwork and be this year's Amon-Ra, I think my pick is going to be JSN. Is that crazy? Am I stupid for saying that? Because Amon-Ra, phenomenal schedule down the stretch. He was hovering right around that 4 to 5 target range the entire year. The only difference you can really point at is Amon-Ra, he didn't have a DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett ahead of him. But like, part of me is like, so what? JSN has the ceiling to be the best wide receiver on this team by the end of the year. He has that talent. But again, I'm fearful the coaching staff is just too prideful.
I think I can see where people come from when they say, "Is he this year's Amon-Ra?"
I mean, that's extreme because let's be honest, like I'm never going to be able to pull who this year's Amon-Ra is out of my butt, right? Like that's just not possible.
Right? We can
came out of the woodwork. There was no hype around him at all.
Yeah, at all. Well,
and he just came out and just exploded.
No, except for the guy that took him in the startup draft and then dropped him because he wasn't getting any kind of usage in the first half of the year, and then all of a sudden he broke out. And
that's all right. I added him from week 7 to 8, and then I also dropped him because that's when he put up like 2 duds in a row. Like
you and me both, points. Brother.
Bam.
No, like I think again, I can see where people are coming from. My vote for this year's Amon-Ra is actually Rashee Rice, but
I like it.
Again, this really comes down to the coaching staff, and it's a shame. It's a shame, and you just kind of hope for the best. That's why you take a flyer on a guy like JSN because you know the talent's there.
Yeah, 100%. Take the flyer on JSN. A guy who might be worth taking a flyer on, Marquise Brown of the Arizona Cardinals. I mean, they have a week 14 bye, but then San Francisco, Chicago, Philadelphia. Those are 3 phenomenal matchups. Problem with Marquise Brown, he's had back-to-back duds in Kyler's return. 4 targets, 1 reception, 28 yards in week 10. And then week 11, 2 receptions on 5 targets for only 18 yards, plus a negative 6-yard rush. Are we going to be disappointed by Hollywood rest of the year? Because he originally was on my radar as a guy, who could return to that top 12 play that he was at the start of the year. He was a wide receiver 12 through the first 4 weeks in PPR formats. I thought he could return to that, be the sneaky league winner where you look back and it's like, man, Hollywood ripped off like 6 straight games of 18 plus. Not 18 plus. Let's say 16 plus. Make it a little more realistic, but you get my point. Like, I thought he had that potential. I'm questioning that now in Kyler's return.
I still have a little bit of hope for Arizona's passing game. You got the Rams next, and then you got the Steelers. 2 kind of middle of the pack opponents. But then you've got your bye week in week 14. So in my head, I'm kind of hoping, right, week 10 was the first game with Kyler. We then have 4 games to kind of work out in-game kinks, we'll call it.
Sure.
Work out all the rest of it in the bye week. And then you come back in 15, 16, 17 and just kind of show out a little bit. You just kind of hope, though, that they stay competitive, because
you're right.
You would hate to see them kind of just tank the rest of the year.
I'm not too fearful of that because they haven't had that mentality all year.
Yes.
So why would they do that now?
Right. You have a borderline Super Bowl champion coach in Jonathan Gannon. And I say borderline because they never did, but you know what I'm saying. I doubt that he's going to let that mindset take over. I feel like as a first year coach, that's a pretty poor job.
Yeah. I mean, if someone's looking to flip Marquise Brown just to try and get another, like, to get some sort of a piece, like, I'd be willing to take a shot on Hollywood as like a depth piece. Like, I have him as my wide receiver 4 in one of my leagues.
Oh, that's awesome.
And that's right. That's where I'd want Hollywood to be. I don't think I trust him as a wide receiver 2 or 3 right now. If I can get him as a 4, that'd be ideal. But again, what you're looking at to give up for Hollywood, maybe people are just like ready to sell after 2 games with Kyler. They're like, nope, this isn't what it was chalked up to be. Michael Wilson, you interested in him at all? Here, let me ask you this. Do you know who the lead target getter was for Arizona this past week?
Wasn't it Greg Dortch?
It was Greg Dortch. Freaking 6 receptions on 8 targets. So look, Michael Wilson's going to take those snaps when he comes back and is healthy. He sat out with a shoulder injury. Any interest in stashing Michael Wilson at all? Just given the context of the schedule, I don't think he'll be a playoff hero, but
no. I personally don't. I know that Kyler, I shouldn't say likes, but he's shown more rapport with Rondale Moore and Greg Dortch in the past.
Well, I mean, Rondale only had 1 catch for 48 yards and a score.
I mean, just look at last year though. Before he got hurt, like, he was on something. You wanted Rondale? You wanted Rondale?
Forget we have that drop. I love that drop so much.
Classic.
Let's move on to the Eagles. Because we only got 10 minutes left for the end of the episode, and we got quarterbacks and tight ends to cover still, but they won't take long. Philadelphia Eagles, Dallas, Seattle, New York, Arizona. Phenomenal schedule except for Dallas, but again, that game's going to be high scoring. We saw these wide receivers eat against the Dallas Cowboys not that long ago. A.J. Brown, he's been dominant. He's going to continue to dominate. End of story. We're not going to talk anymore there. Devonta Smith is the guy I want to talk about, though. Devonta Smith has more games with less than 5 targets than he does with more than 7 targets. That is extremely concerning to me. Now, you get no Dallas Goedert in the upcoming weeks, at least probably 2 more weeks, but he could certainly be back for the fantasy playoffs. So, like, let's do this. Let's do a heat check on Devonta. You want in? You want out? You're just along for the ride? Where are you at with Devonta Smith?
I am out. I'll say it. I'm out.
Way to take a stance. I appreciate it.
I fully recognize that he can be a lot better and should be a lot better with no Dallas Goedert now. And I think the only difference from last year and this year, I guess, is that it feels like Philly has a lot more confidence in their run game than they did with Miles Sanders. So I think because of the willingness to run the ball more, rely on the run game a little bit more, I think that's why we've seen so many opportunities, not necessarily taken away, but just not gone to Devonta Smith, which I don't know if that's necessarily the right move, but I'm not a coach. I'm not a GM. I'm not paid to make those kind of decisions. But and let's say Dallas Goedert's injury only keeps him out for 2 more games. Like, then you're stuck in a situation with Dallas Goedert,
Right.
with the backfield that they have. And even in a great matchup, great schedule that he has, I'm kind of concerned that we see performances like we saw against Miami, where he only had 4 catches for 49 yards.
Right.
Like, that's my worry. That's what I think could happen if everything goes against Devonta Smith.
I would pitch it to somebody right now who is needing to get to the playoffs and sell them Devonta Smith.
Yes.
And try and get an equitable return right now.
Yep.
Go out and get a struggling stud for Devonta Smith right now, because you're right. I think I'm more out than in. I don't know if I'm necessarily just along for the ride, but I am more out than in, because like, even look, the week before the bye, what, 4 targets, 3 receptions, saved by a touchdown. That's not what I want to see with Dallas Goedert out, man. I want to see 8+ targets with Dallas Goedert out. I just don't know if we're going to get that, especially if Dallas Goedert comes back in the fantasy playoffs. Now, again, now that I've said that, Devonta Smith, 20 burger tonight. Book it. I will come back tomorrow and I'll sound stupid, but that's just, I think you're right. I'm more out than in, and Cameron isn't here to defend his boy Devonta Smith. So we're going to move on. Suck it, Cameron. What a loser.
Loser.
Let's move on to quarterbacks. Let's wrap out the episode with quarterbacks and tight ends. We don't have a lot of talking to do here, but a few names we want to bring up. Kirk Cousins last year, he was kind of the guy we were looking at here. He was a quarterback 6 rest of season during the playoffs. He's kind of the epitome of what we're looking for of a league winner at the quarterback position, right? Not a guy, I mean, he's not going to go out and give you 30+ every week like a Jalen Hurts or a Josh Allen have the potential to. But these guys who kind of bring up the rear, but you know what? When you're questioning, I mean, it won't be Joe Burrow this year, but like, you might seriously get some weeks where you're like Justin Herbert or Dak Prescott. And that's the name I want to talk about, because since week 6, my gosh, quarterback 1, quarterback 3, quarterback 2, quarterback 1, quarterback 15 this last week, but they really
wait. What was that? What was that last one?
Quarterback 15. They really didn't need that against Carolina, though, because your boy Tony Pollard had his get right game.
Oh, shut.
Look, he is clearing away the league-winning quarterback you want this year. Philadelphia, Buffalo, Miami, Detroit. We talked about it. These are all high-scoring games. If they are going to be second in pass rate over expectation, Dak is going to be involved. He's going to be plenty involved in these high-scoring games. These are also great matchups for quarterbacks. It's clearing away Dak Prescott. He is the clear quarterback, league-winning quarterback that you are going to want the rest of the season. I made my case in last week's episode. I don't really want to beat a dead horse with it, but since you weren't here to hear my rant, like, what say you? I'll let you get your thoughts in, because Cam was in agreement with me. I know it pains you to say it, but you agree with me too.
Yeah.
What was that? Say it a little louder.
They don't want to run the ball, and it sucks. It makes you just want to cry sometimes, but they just keep throwing the ball. It's good things for Dak, I guess.
Good things for Dak, good things for CD. I'll take you out of misery and let's move on. Let's talk about Kyler Murray next, because I think he's the other guy you can throw into this conversation. He's looked real good the first 2 games back, quarterback 13, quarterback 6. He's been running too. Right away. 33 rushing yards, 51 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns.
Love it.
Again, you get the bye, then you get San Francisco, Chicago, Philadelphia in weeks 15 to 17. Those are 2 games with high scoring potential, and all 3 are great matchups for quarterbacks. So I love Kyler Murray. I think he's the other sneaky candidate you have to look at here, where, again, like, you talk about who could be a guy that's top 5 rest of season. I think Dak and Kyler are the 2 guys you point fingers at and say, yeah, these guys turned it on late in the season. And you know what? And during the fantasy playoffs, they finished as top 4, top 5 guys. I think it's 100% the 2 you point fingers at and say, it's them. No questions asked.
Yeah. I mean, if there's a Cardinals player I want, it's Kyler Murray.
Yeah.
And that's solely, and it's only because Kyler is playing for his job at this point.
Yep.
if he doesn't play well, Arizona, even though I don't know how they would be able to do it, but they would move on from him and his contract. So Kyler is playing for his job right now.
He's playing pretty dang good coming off of injury for it as well.
Oh.
Just a handful of guys. They're like a bunch of middling guys, but guys who could potentially make a difference if you lost to Joe Burrow and you don't have an option to get a Kyler Murray, to get a Dak Prescott, any of those top tier guys. Will Levis has an interesting schedule: Miami, Houston, Seattle, Houston. I'm not in love with it. I don't love their offensive line. I'll tell you that. Their offensive line is the most disgusting thing I've ever watched in my entire life. They cannot defend that man for, even if Will Levis's life depended on it. I think it does most weeks, and they can't do it. Like, it's pretty bad, but interesting schedule to consider. Russell Wilson with the Broncos. This one fascinates me. Chargers, Detroit, New England Chargers, 3 high-scoring potential games in there, and 3 games where they're probably going to have to let Russ try and cook a little bit. You're not buying in on it. I'm not saying that Russell Wilson should go out and you should go out and start Russell Wilson as a top 12 guy, but like, would you also be surprised if he has 3 top 10 games in there?
Yes.
You would be surprised.
I would be very surprised. I feel like the past
Interesting.
I feel like the past 4 weeks with Russ have been a facade, honestly. Like, listen to just these numbers, okay? Week 7 against Green Bay, 20 for 29, only 9 incompletions or 9 non-completed passes, 194 yards, 1 touchdown. Week 8 against Kansas City in the snow game, 12 completed passes, 19 attempts, only 7 non-completed passes, 114 yards, 3 passing touchdowns, 30 rushing yards. Week 10 against Buffalo, 24 for 29, 193, 2 touchdowns, and 30 rushing yards. Against Minnesota, 27 completed passes on 35 attempts, 259 yards, a touchdown. At some point, someone's going to figure out this Denver offense. And Russ has been making easy throws. No one has put him in a spot to make difficult throws. So I do not buy what's going on in Denver. If there's someone I buy, it's Javonte Williams. But even then, I'm just like, nah.
But I'm still not thrilled with the matchups. Right. So I get that. I'm not trying to bang the drum for Russ or anything. But again, I'm not going to be surprised if he just squeaks in there and just puts together an ugly 3 touchdown game, and he finishes as a top 10 guy, because that's all it would take. I mean, you look earlier in the year when he played Washington and Chicago. He had 20-plus point days against them, and those were 2 of the worst pass defenses in the league. And now we're looking at the Chargers and Detroit, who also aren't that great against quarterbacks. Anyways, there's total validity to what you're saying. I'm not trying to bang the drum for Russ, but if you're in a pinch, he's a guy I'd at least be willing to look towards. Russ or Jordan Love during the playoffs, because Jordan Love gets Giants, the Bucks, the Panthers, and the Vikings. Look, Jordan Love, sneaky little heater. 18 plus each of the last 2 weeks. 18 in week 10, 20 this last week. I mean, you don't mind the match. Look, you laugh, but this, like, when we're looking for emergency guys, these are guys we're splitting hairs between.
Yeah, you're right. I am. Yeah. If we really want to I don't want to bash your choices here, but like a legit option.
Go look at the rest of season strength of schedule. I mean, these are guys who have top in the notch schedules. That's all I'm pointing out here. That's all I'm pointing out.
Tua.
Okay, here's my fear with Tua, though. We got to have a conversation on Tua.
Oh,
can he play a good team and not suck?
Oh, that was a heavy hitter.
Serious question. Oof. Can he play a good team and not suck? Like that's what I'm afraid of. Is like, yeah, we project these high scoring games, but does he run into Dallas's defense and Tua throws 3 picks in that game? I think that's incredibly likely.
Fascinating. Okay.
I know you're bought in on Tua. You
heck yeah, I am.
Yeah, you little biased, but I'll let it go.
You fine. You got me.
I don't even know why I put Derek Carr on this list. I mean, he gets Carolina, the Giants, the Rams, and Bucks. Fine matchups there, but you're not going to look Derek Carr's way, even though he's been a consistent 16 to 18. But I don't think he's going to do anything with that, even in favorable matchups.
Here's one more name. I know we're getting kind of late here, but here's one more name for you. You ready for this one?
Dante Culpepper.
Oh, geez, what a pull.
I'm on fire tonight.
Ready? Ready for this one? Brock Purdy.
I don't mind that one. I mean, look, so if we're talking just pure gamers, yes, like I think Brock Purdy is the guy you have to look at as a potential league or potential playoff hero as well. I mean, the schedule isn't just that top tier, but I mean, Brock Purdy plays like an animal at home this year.
Yep, and I mean, high scoring games could be a thing for him. All right, like here's the thing with San Francisco: they don't care if it's a high scoring game because they have a good enough defense to shut down the opposing offense, and they will just run up points.
Right.
So Seattle twice, Philly, that's a high scoring game against Philly. Arizona, they'll put up points. Baltimore, high scoring game, I think.
Oh my gosh, how did Brock Purdy not make this list? Oh my goodness, Philadelphia, Seattle, Arizona, Baltimore. Yeah, you're right. Get Brock Purdy on this list. He is by far, yeah. How did I miss Brock Purdy? I love me some Brock Purdy now. I used to be public enemy number one. Now I'm Brock Purdy's biggest fantasy stand.
I mean, within reason.
Oh, within reason. Yeah, he Tom Brady. I don't think he survives out of Shanahan's system, but that's just me. But yeah, no, you're right. Give me Brock Purdy over all those guys. I would still take Dak and Kyler, but yeah, Brock Purdy should. Purdy. Absolutely. Golly, I'm upset that I missed that now. Thanks for pointing that out and correcting me on that. All right, let's wrap it up with tight ends here. There's nobody.
There's nobody.
You play who's good. That's it. You play who's good. I mean, TJ Hawkinson. I mean, Vegas, Cincinnati, Detroit, Green Bay. That's probably one of the more favorable schedules you're going to get. And he's relevant. You're already playing him every week. Sam Laporte is another great one. Chicago, Denver, Minnesota, Dallas. You like all those except for Dallas. After that, you're splitting hair. David Njoku has a really good schedule. Chigakonkwo. Oh my God. Miami, Houston, Seattle, Houston. Houston is garbage against tight ends. How about, are you ready for the little rookie tight end action outside of Sam Laporta? Michael Mayer, Minnesota, the Chargers, Kansas City, Indianapolis. I mean, talk about getting the juices going. My gosh, those three guys just invigorating. I want nothing to do with any of them. They just have some of the strongest schedules. If you're absolutely desperate, I think David Njoku is the only guy I'm even remotely interested in, and that's with Dorian Thompson-Robinson.
You forgot another name here.
You're going to say George Kittle.
No.
Well, Trey McBride is going to be on your list.
No.
Who is it then?
It's Taysom Hill.
Oh, gosh.
Listen to this. Atlanta next week. Detroit, Carolina, Giants, Rams, Tampa.
Sure. Okay, here. Okay, I'll give you this. I would much rather play Taysom Hill over all the guys that I just named.
Yes, there it is. Yes.
That's what I will say. I will give you that. I don't love again, I'm looking at best schedules, guys who can take advantage of their schedules, but Taysom could be one of those guys as well. Only other guy I want to point out here, Pat Freiermuth of the Steelers, New England, Indianapolis, Cincinnati, Seattle. A handful of teams susceptible in there. You have any interest in him coming back now?
Well, let's take a look at what he did in his first week. No, never mind. Nope.
Oh, whatever you do, save your eyes from his first 3-week box score. It was awful. It was terrible.
Have you looked up his stats from week 11?
From week 11? No,
yeah.
I have not.
Take a guess how many routes the man ran.
How many routes he ran? My guess is going to be single digits. 7. No, well, that's 2. No, double 5. 14. Okay.
Right. 14. Yeah, but that's 42% of the team's total routes.
Oh gosh.
Oh, man, not good. Not good. He finished with negative air yards.
Oh gosh. So even just, yeah, I mean, look, if you got a good tight end, you play a good tight end. You're kind of SOL otherwise. I'm not a big fan of a lot of these other guys that we're looking at who have good schedules rest of season.
I will say this though too, real quick. Again, I know we're getting late, but if Cooper Kupp's injury is much more serious.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I didn't bring this one up, but
Tyler Higbee is all of a sudden one of the best options at tight end. He was the tight end 9 the first 4 weeks of the year without Cooper Kupp.
Yeah, and I skipped over in wide receivers. I skipped over Puka Nacua as well because I think he then very clearly becomes the Amon-Ra to close out the year. Is very clearly target hog. You don't even like the matchups aren't even that bad. Like you get Baltimore, Washington, New Orleans, and the Giants. I mean, you don't love Baltimore and New Orleans, but New Orleans can be taken advantage of. Washington, the Giants obviously can. So yeah, I mean, he very clearly becomes the number 1 playoff hero at the end of the year. I think if Cooper Kupp does miss extended time, that's a good catch because I did not touch on that, but Tyler Higbee I think enters that conversation then as well. Any other omissions? Any other things you want to add before we take off?
No, I'm all set on that one.
Great. There you go. Potential playoff heroes. Handful of guys we didn't name, but really wanted to highlight some of the best schedules to close out the season. If you haven't subscribed to the channel already, if you're watching over on YouTube, we'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in. FF Fellas on Twitter, the FF Fellas on Instagram, Fantasy Football Fellas here on YouTube, Facebook, and TikTok as well. Make sure you're subscribed. Turn on those notifications so you know when all of our new videos are out. If you're listening to the audio version of this podcast, thanks for listening over there. We are so grateful. A lot of you have been with us since we originally started the podcast and then started branching into social media content. So your continuous support has meant a lot to us. We would love to hear from you. Day ones. We would love to hear from you if you wouldn't mind leaving us a nice little review and giving us your thoughts on the show. We love hearing from you all. We love being able to take feedback and apply it to make our show even better. I'm at Lucas Wenzel on Twitter, Tyler_Plath for Tyler. Again, reminder, no Thursday episode this week. We will all be traveling for Thanksgiving, so enjoy yourself the holiday. Eat plenty of turkey. Enjoy the time with your family if you choose to celebrate. We will be back next week. We will see you then. Deuces.